Welcome back to Kino's Kino, our weekly reviews of the 2017 reboot of Kino's Journey. The question that we ask in every episode is this episode of Kino's Journey Kino? And quite frankly, this episode, episode 2 Coliseum, was not Kino, in my opinion. But you disagree, we Lord G to Z?
I disagree with people's opinions regarding how it's adapted.
How it's adapted, and how was this episode adapted, we Lord GTC? Good? You think it was acted good?
Okay, so I think for context here, we have to first say that this week's story was the Coliseum story,
yes,
which people might remember from the original anime. And the original anime was kind of a two-part, kind of mini tournament, like, set of episodes.
Episodes 6 and 7.
Yup. So for this version, they decided to just do it as one episode, since from a plot perspective, all they really have to do is introduce Shizu. They want this to be a reboot that can also be accessible to new people, so they have to do the Coliseum story again, because that's how Shizu's introduced. So they went with adapting it in one episode, which is possible, because it's not like a super long story, and the original anime did add a lot of stuff.
It is longer than a normal chapter of Kino's Journey.
Yeah, it definitely is longer.
It is about 50 or so pages.
Yeah, so it's definitely longer, but it's doable, especially since a lot of the actual story itself is, like, internal monologues, or just, like, third-person stuff, rather than the actual, like, events. So, yeah, like, I went into this thing, okay, it's gonna be fine. It's not gonna be as good as the original. Like, honestly, like, I don't think most people were expecting it to be as good as the original, because they're only doing it as one episode. But what's bothering me is that a lot of critics are saying, oh, it's a bad adaptation. And then they'll list off examples of why it's a bad adaptation by saying it's cutting out stuff from the original novel. And it is cutting out stuff. But the things that people think that they're cutting out are anime original material made for the original anime, not content that was actually in the novel.
That is fair.
And, like, okay. It's one thing to prefer the original version, which I also prefer the original version. It is the better version. But, like, honestly, if you show this to just some random person who's never seen the original anime, I think they'd be fine with it. Most of the criticism I feel that's going to be coming from this episode is people who watch the original anime and don't like that it's not exactly the same.
I definitely got that sense as well. Having read the original version of the story in the light novel, I can confirm that this version in the 2017 adaptation is more faithful to the light novel. The original adaptation did take some major liberties with the material. It changed things dramatically. It added so many more layers. It completely changed the characterizations of Kino's contestants, the overall tone of the story. Kino's very motivations were changed from how they originally were in this story.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'd say out of any story in the original Kino's Journey, this is the one that they took the most, I guess, kind of into their own hands and kind of just changed up. Because it is an interesting story, but it's not, like, nearly the same level that the anime adapted. The anime took it to a new level by expanding on it and extending the narrative into 2 episodes.
That's right. So, with what the original anime did was that they added this layer that, hey, only the people at the top, the elite citizens, are prospering and living comfortable lives, but they're doing it at the expense of the lower classes who are living in poverty and misery. So there's this huge class divide, this imbalance in social hierarchy.
Yeah. Which in the novel version is everyone. Like, any new person that comes to the country has to participate in this.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, like, the country itself.
Oh.
In the anime,
yeah,
it was
in the anime, you have, like, the whole, like, the rich are just at the top having happy lives, and everyone else is just in the slums.
Right. The guard that Kino befriends in the original anime, we see that his family, is living in poverty. Like, he's not very well off.
Yeah.
In the light novel and in the new anime, he's just some asshole guy. I mean, he's kind of respects Kino because she, keeps winning the fights, but he's not, like, in a bad place in terms of his living conditions.
You don't feel
the other
feel
citizens are living pretty well.
You don't feel nearly as sympathetic for the citizens.
No, not at all, because they are all pretty much complicit in this game to the death.
Watching foreigners kill themselves.
Pretty much, yeah. So there are no sympathetic people in this country, unlike in the 2003 anime.
Yeah.
The king himself is pretty much a non-character.
Basically.
In the light novel and in the new version. In the original anime, he was given a much more fleshed out characterization because we actually saw him interact with the other characters. And we saw that he had become crazy. He suffered a nervous breakdown and he's paranoid. He killed his own family. He killed his wife and tried to kill his sons because he was paranoid.
I think also one of the fights in the original anime, he killed one of the contestants.
Yeah.
Because he was pissed off. Like, he kills one of the contestants that Kino was fighting, I think.
Yeah, the female contestant Kino fought. He killed her because her backstory, her reason to win the tournament and gain citizenship was to instate a rule where they would have a day to honor her mother because her mother passed away. And so she wanted to make a rule about honoring your mother and like giving them white flowers, which were her mother's favorite.
Yeah.
And so the king, obviously, because he had such a troubled relationship with his wife, He's
like, fuck this bitch. Well, I'm gonna shoot her. Yeah.
Yeah, so he killed her out of misplaced aggression against, what he did to his own wife and his own feelings towards her. So that made Kino very upset because he killed someone that she had spared and who was, by all accounts, a pretty decent person with a pretty innocent motivation. And so that is what made Kino mad, and that is why one of the reasons why she killed the king.
Kino angry, Kino smash.
Yeah. She killed the king in the 2003 anime, both to avenge that woman and also to break the cycle of violence in Shizu's family. So that Shizu wouldn't have to kill the king and he could escape from that cycle. Because in the original anime, she recognized that Shizu had a connection to the king. Yeah. Whereas in the light novel, it states, how could I not have known? So she was completely unaware in the light novel. In the new anime, I don't think they explicitly make it clear. Hermes obviously didn't know, but they don't say that Kino didn't know. But in the light novel, she didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, in the light novel version, they source like Kino's revenge mainly off of the travelers that she had met in the past who had, like a couple had went to the Coliseum, and then the husband died and the woman left.
And the woman told Kino that it was a wonderful place and that she should definitely visit there.
Yeah.
So in the 2003 anime, Kino visited because she sensed like a melancholy wistfulness behind the woman's smile and gaze. Like she knew something was off, but she was very curious about why she was smiling like that. So that's why she went to the Colosseum to find out the reason why the woman was smiling like that, even though she had visited such a terrible place. In the light novel and in the new anime, Kino is like very spiteful and angry. She's shocked to hear that the Coliseum is a terrible place, and she gets very spiteful and angry when she hears about what happened. But in this version, Kino's motivations are for revenge. She feels very spiteful about, like, coming to this country where she thought would be pretty nice, but it's not a good place, and they mistreated, like, these travelers, and so she just is very frustrated about this, and so she gets revenge by punishing these people. In the light novel, it makes it clear that the rule that she makes at the end is supposed to give the citizens an out, because the idea of it, everyone in the country needs to fight in order, and the one left standing will be the new king.
Yeah.
Like, when you think about it, you need to understand that she was expecting the people to understand if they really thought about it. That obviously, if everyone fought to the death, then there'd be no one left to rule over.
Apparently some people didn't get the memo.
Yeah, some people didn't get the memo in the light novel, and that's what they started fighting.
Like, they also mentioned in the light novel that there are a lot of people escape in the Coliseum once the fighting starts.
Yeah, because
like, there's only like a small minority who's actually doing the fighting.
Yeah, and in the new anime, Basically, everyone starts fighting each other.
Well, at least what
clear.
it looks like, they don't really. I think even just having like a half a second of just like people running out of the Coliseum while just a small amount of people are fighting would have been better.
Yeah, they don't.
From the looks of it, you can kind of tell that it's not like everyone's fighting, but they don't really emphasize it off that it's only a minority of people who are fighting.
Yeah, the new anime doesn't make it clear that Kino was also trying to give an out to people who didn't want to fight. Like,
I mean, she does tell the guard, "Get out of here if you want to live" and stuff. But
but she said that to everyone in the 2003 anime, saying that you can have this amount of time to wait before this fight for who will determine the new king, and then anyone who doesn't want to fight can leave the country and give up their citizenship.
Yeah,
so
in the anime,
explicitly says that in the old anime.
In the old anime, they have like a time frame where like they can escape before the fighting starts. When the light novel in the anime, it's just the fighting starts right away.
Yeah, and then in the new anime, it doesn't have the nuances of what Kino is trying to go for, like in the light novel. So that was...
Yeah, the lack of those nuances, I say, is the bad part of how it adapted it.
Yeah.
Like, that's where the problems are. Not cutting out anime original material.
I definitely think that comes from a lack of recognition of what the 2003 anime changed.
Honestly,
so
like,
if you're
this is the thing, like, if you haven't seen the light novel, that's fine. It's not easily available. Tokyopop only released one volume, and it's now $30.
It's also a Tokyopop release, so the translation is not the best.
It's not
There's
perfect.
many times where they insist on calling Kino a woman, and then sometimes where they refer to Kino as a he.
Which is weird, because
Kino is not supposed to be referred to as either he or she. Kino is gender neutral. Kino does not identify as either general. Keiichi Sawa, the light novel author, himself has stated that Kino does not identify with any gender.
But that's one thing that, I guess, just on a side note about, like, the subs for the Crunchyroll one. I wonder why they don't just use they. Like,
I don't know.
They sounds like, they and them sounds like a weird, kind of more awkward phrasing, but that's how we refer to non-binary gender individuals.
Yeah.
So, that's culturally acceptable. Just use it.
Land of the Lustrous is doing it. Why?
Land of the Lustrous does it. That's how we talk to non-binary gender people. That's one of the pronouns that they prefer being called by. So
yeah, it's very strange that the Crunchyroll insists on calling Kino a he.
Yeah, which is strange, because Kino doesn't identify as a man.
Kino doesn't identify as man or woman. Kino is non-binary.
Like, the only reason I can think
as she repeatedly says, Kino is Kino. Yeah. And that's one of the very strange things about the Tokyopop translation, is that they keep insisting on calling Kino a certain gender, whether it's male or female, and that just is not right.
It's a different time back then, and
it's also Tokyopop.
It's also Tokyopop. This came out, like, what?
2006.
Yeah, so less progressive time.
Yeah, that is true. A lot has changed in a decade.
But yeah, I mean, if we ever get a new, like, Kino's Journey light novel translation, please, Yen Press, do it. I'm sure they would use, like, non-binary terms.
I would hope so, and I really would hope for a re-release of Kino's Journey, the light novel.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of it, and more of it needs to be read.
Definitely. I mean, but as I was going to say before, it's like, it's one thing for viewers to say, oh, okay, it's not as good as the original, but why are you comparing it to a novel that you've never read?
I think it's, again, just lack of knowledge.
Oh, no! Like, they've never read the novel, clearly. Don't compare it to the novel, then!
Yeah, again, it's lack of knowledge. They assume that the original anime was more faithful.
Which is dumb. Very few light novel adaptations are 100% faithful. Like, you have less light novel adaptations that are 100% faithful to the original source than you have of anime adaptations of manga that are faithful to the original source. Because light novels translate very differently into anime.
Yeah.
You will probably never have 100% faithful adaptation. You can't assume that's going to be 100% faithful.
That is true. Again, I'm not that hung up on it, what people are criticizing it for. I mean, again, yeah, it's a lack of knowledge that this new version of the Coliseum story is more faithful to the original story as presented in the light novels. I do agree, though, that it is an inferior interpretation when compared to the 2003 anime and what it did with the story.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Especially with Kino asking each contestant why they are fighting. It's introduced in the light novel version. It doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah,
but it's such
really
an integral
explored.
part of the story in the 2003 anime. Shizu is introduced and set up so much better in the 2003 anime in terms of his relationship with the king and how that whole develops. And all the contestants are more fleshed out and more interesting. In the light novel and the new anime, most of Kino's fights are played off for comedy. Even the fight she has with the old man who insists that Kino kills him. Something like that happens in all the versions, but it's so much better in the 2003 anime version because that character is more interesting. And then the way that is directed, the pace is just so much better.
The anime in general, the original anime in general, just has far more attention during the fights because they actually show the fights. It's not just like 5 seconds of Kino waving her gun at the enemy and them giving up.
In both versions of the anime, Kino kills the king out of revenge.
Yeah.
But there's such a difference in framing of why.
There's a difference in,
Kino was pissed off from the beginning in this new version in the light novel. But in the 2003 anime, she was just curious about this country.
To the point where she realized, okay, I'm gonna kill this bastard.
It went to a point after she had learned more about the other contestants, and specifically after the king went out of his way to kill the female contestant who just wanted to make a day honoring her mother. That's what made Kino upset enough to kill the king. Whereas
the new anime and the light novel, she's, from the beginning, going out for revenge.
Yeah, she's more sarcastic and she's more spiteful.
Yeah.
Which is like a huge change in characterization. And there's just so much more reason for her to kill the king and change society because the society is not good for a lot of the people in that country. And again, she gives the people who don't want to fight a way out. So it's only like the really bad people who are gonna like kill themselves.
Yeah.
And even then, they don't have to kill themselves in the 2003 anime. She doesn't specify it has to be a fight to the death. It's only stated to be such in the light novel and in the new anime version.
Yeah. And overall, I think this is a case of people remembering a very memorable set of episodes from the original anime, but not realizing that it's portrayed very differently than the source material.
Yeah.
Then when they see a new interpretation, they're like, oh, they ruined this story.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm going to be completely honest and saying that the original version of the story wasn't that good. I think that the 2003 anime was far superior.
I think the original version of the story is good, but the original anime's interpretation of it was a lot better.
They just fleshed out all the characters involved. They fleshed out the kingdom itself. It's just so much...
Yeah.
There's just so much more going on to why it's the way it is. Everything feels so much more complete with that two-parter than it does with the light novel version or the new anime version. But ultimately, why the story was adapted is that it was one of the most popular Kino's Journey stories. So clearly, light novel readers in Japan still like the original version of the story.
Yeah.
What's more, narratively, it's important to adapt this because this is where Kino first introduced to Shizu, who is a recurring character.
Yeah. I always found it strange that the original anime made this a two-parter when Shizu never shows up again in that anime.
Right, but again, I think it's because it was a popular story to begin with that they thought that they could flesh it out.
Yeah. Like, in this version, I feel like even though it is trying to introduce new fans into the franchise, at the same time, it doesn't want to... I think they probably didn't want to do this as a two-parter again because people have already seen it. Like, if people don't like this version, you can go watch the old version.
Well,
there's nothing stopping you from watching it. Like,
to be fair, they did adapt it faithfully this time.
Yeah, they did.
So you can't say that they didn't make any changes or condense the story.
But even...
they didn't really condense the story. They pretty much adapted it faithfully.
Yeah, even then, though, there's nothing stopping you from going and buying the old Kino's Journey DVD, which is still in print and is like less than $20, and going and watching that original Coliseum version if you so choose.
It's just a disappointing interpretation, though. Just because it's a more faithful adaptation doesn't mean it's as satisfying.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I mean, I don't think we're going to have this problem with the other readapted stories, because the other ones are very faithful to the actual source.
Well, the only one you can really vouch for is the grown-up country.
Well, I've read fan translations of the other ones.
Well, there's only going to be 2 more. There's going to be Land of Adults, and there's going to be
the Country of Kindness or whatever.
Yeah.
A Kind Country, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Both of those are pretty faithful to the actual source material. I think with the Country of Kindness, they do take a few liberties, since it was like the final episode. But yeah, I know Country of Adults is pretty much a straight adaptation.
One thing that worries me about Country Adults is just how they're going to portray Kino. Because I feel like in the opening theme, we see Kino's character design, and he looks like a lot younger and a lot less distinct than his 2003 counterpart. He doesn't have like the long hair tied in a bow tie. He doesn't have glasses, it seems.
They show young Kino
really
in the opening?
Yeah, young Kino, the original Kino.
Original Kino. Oh, okay.
And they do show young Kino, too, in, like, a scene where Kino is, like, sitting by a, like, fountain, I think, and we see a reflection of her younger self. So we do see that, too, but I'm referring to the original Kino.
Okay, I need to rewatch that opening.
He looks completely different than he looked in the
I didn't know that was supposed to be original Kino.
But I'm pretty sure that is who it's supposed to be.
Oh, okay. Okay, I have to rewatch that opening now, because I didn't think that was original Kino. But it might be.
This episode did give us the opening theme, so yeah. I guess
it's a nice opening theme.
I like the song. It's not as memorable as the original song, but visually... Yeah, the original song felt more appropriate as a travelogue. This new song is a little more generic, but it's a good song. I like a lot of the visuals. I like the visuals that show off, like, the other characters.
Yeah.
Like, Shizu, Riku, and the little girl, and then the master, and whatever. Like, the visuals showing off the new characters are cool, and the scene where Kino is on Hermes, and there are, like, a bunch of birds flying around them is really nice. I don't know. I think that the original team is more iconic to me, but the new one isn't bad. There's some good moments in it. I think that the show is going to suffer musically from, like, that lack of ambiance that the original show provided.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't have that, like, ambient tone to it. It's,
like the bells. Like, the sound design in general, like, it's not as layered. It's not as great as like, bringing the world to life.
Like, the old anime had kind of, like, the whole Mushishi style music vibe, where it's, like, just very ominous.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
The ambiance is not as strong with the new version. Neither is, like, the locations as visually memorable. Because the original Kino's Journey had, like, such distinct location designs that had a very fairy tale-esque quality to them. Mm-hmm. Like something out of a children's picture book. And then in this version, they just look more standard.
Yeah, I think we have to see more of these, like, countries first to really be able to pin that down, but yeah, that can be a bit of concern.
Yeah, so this episode is making me a lot more hesitant about this adaptation, giving me a lot more qualms about it now that I'm noticing, yeah, seeing how this stacks up to the previous version's interpretation of the same story, this is definitely inferior in almost every way in how it's presented.
Honestly, I wish I could find someone who hasn't seen the original Kino's Journey that's watching this, because I'd want to see, like, their, like, impression of this episode.
Well, based on comments from those kind of people that I see on Crunchyroll and stuff, those kind of people are enjoying this just fine.
Yeah, so I think a lot of our qualms are the fact that we've seen the original version.
Again, it's like the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood problem.
Yeah.
It adapted what it adapted faithfully, but when you compared it to how the original FMA had adapted those same stories, there was more art to how the original FMA had adapted that similar material.
Yeah, that's
up
true.
Until a certain point before, the halfway point of the original FMA.
This hasn't really made me concerned about the anime overall. Like, I still think it's going to be fine. Like,
I mean, I think I'm going to enjoy the story still. Like, but I definitely now miss the original presentation, because I thought that was just so much stronger.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that the writing is just not going to be as strong in terms of how it's translated from light novel.
Yeah, I think in general it's also the fact that the industry in general has just become a far more obsessed with, I guess, faithful adaptions rather than taking liberties.
That's a real shame.
Yeah.
You know, the original scriptwriter for Kino's Journey, the 2003 series, was Sadayuki Murai, who is responsible for writing scripts for shows like Boogie Pop Phantom, Cowboy Bebop. He's doing Junin Kaisen this season. He's a very skilled screenwriter who is known to, like, really bring out the best in the material he's adapting. And then we get the screenwriter for this version of Kino's Journey, the new version we have, Yuki Sugawara. Guess what Yuki Sugawara has done?
I don't know, School Days?
He's done Sword Art Online, The Asterisk War, and the Mahoka, the irregular.
So all shitty anime.
Yeah, he has handled adaptations of not very good source material. I mean, he worked on 2 episodes.
I mean, there's only so much you can do with an already existing pile of shit, but...
I'm just saying, though, that it's not like he elevated that source material, so he's not gonna...
He's been working with shit, so does he know how to elevate a good cake?
I don't know if he will elevate what the original story was in the same way that Sadayuki Murai did with the first anime, but...
Honestly, though, at the end of the day, I'm just glad that we have Kino back, and that
I like the character, I like these stories, I like the parables, but the message of this episode, what it had to say, oh yeah, this society is obviously bad because it's unfair what they're doing. It's run on violence, and that isn't good. And oh, revenge is pointless. It can lead you to do bad things that won't make you happy at the end. Kino is not happy that she killed the king. Like, she's still feeling like that an emptiness inside her and a frustration. It didn't solve the problem. So, I don't know. It wasn't as interesting of what the original anime's interpretation was, which is more... I mean, it was still about revenge is not a solution, but it wasn't as personal for Kino back then. So it was like Kino was saving Shizu from falling into the cycle of vengeance, like his father did. Yeah. And it was also about how a lot of these characters, you know, they all had their own reasons to fight, and they ranged. They weren't all very shallow, and they ranged in, like, how much they meant to him.
This version in general is just a lot more basic.
A lot more basic. Not as much going on with it. Very unfortunate. We talked a lot about it, but I'm expecting we are going to with a lot of these comparison episodes to the original series.
Yeah, but hopefully critics don't put their heads up their asses and actually read the original stories.
Dude, if you have a qualm against a particular reviewer, just comment in there.
No, it's not one single reviewer, though. It's multiple reviewers.
Okay, well, was this episode of Kino's Journey Kino, we lord?
Is there, like, a middle ground between bad and Kino, like, semi-Kino? Or, like...
It's either Kino or it isn't Kino.
I guess not Kino, then?
Yeah, this episode wasn't Kino. It was disappointing. But I'm hoping for good things from the next episode. So we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Have a beautiful day.